Air India Flight 403 crashed at Sahar International Airport in Bombay, India on the 21st of June 1982. It was likely caused by a miscalculated altitude in a heavy rainstorm. But Prima Curry has a different story to tell. The Currys were on their once every 2-year visit to their relatives in Maharashtra, India. The husband and wife were seated together at the front end of the plane in the second-class seats, while their 2 boys in the early teens were seated close by. The story goes that the Boeing 707 the Currys were on was most probably not the same aeroplane that crashed in which 17 people died. The Currys were on a plane headed from Swaziland to Bombay, with a few stops in between at Johannesburg, South Africa, Port Louis, Mauritius, or whatever was scheduled on that flight plan in those days. The journey in which the incident happened occurred on an Air India passenger plane, which was to take more than a dozen hours. During the flight, the stewardesses began serving refreshments to the passengers from the rear end of the galley of the plane. As the stewardess approached the Currys with her trolley, Mrs. Prima Curry smiled and asked for an orange juice. The stewardess seemed flustered and irritated for some reason, and she informed Mrs. Curry, pretty curtly mind you, that there was no orange juice. Then Mrs. Curry asked for any other juice as she was very thirsty. The stewardess responded saying that there were no other juices and began pushing her trolley down the aisle. Mrs. Curry was not a very patient woman, but she still managed to call after her, asking her to at least provide some water. This was when the stewardess turned to face Mrs. Curry and said, "The water's over. Should I ask the pilot to stop the plane to get you some water? Maybe you can take a glass and dip it into the sea." It was at this moment that Mr. Curry woke up from a brief nap and was met with Mrs. Curry saying, "I curse you for behaving in such a way, and you deserve to be punished." It wasn't wrong to say that Mr. Curry was shocked and proceeded to calm his wife down, especially so as he had many an experience with Mrs. Curry's supernatural leanings and that her curses and visions of the future were not to be messed with. The plane landed and the family of 4 headed over to the relative's place where they usually hold up during these visits. A few days later, in the early morning, most of the host families and the Currys are sitting in the living room having their cup of tea. Mr. Curry is reading the morning newspaper when he gasps and his eyes go wide. Everyone in the hall notices his gasps and asks, "What's wrong?" Mr. Curry shows them the front page of the newspaper in which is splashed the news of the Air India crash. A few passport-sized images of the people who lost their lives in the crash could be seen in the article. 2 crew members had lost their lives. The image of the first crew member was that of the stewardess who Mrs. Curry had cursed. Mrs. Curry remained in a state of distress and regretted her lack of patience and promised herself that she'd be more careful in future. Although her family members and her friends told her that a curse and the stewardess's death was just a coincidence. The story does seem pretty interesting. Superstition or proof of the unknown.
What would be wrong in going back in time to see my parents again? To tell them about the future.